as opposed to Persona 3's where there's only one murder of one of the main characters, and but there's no actual, it's mostly just kind of going through Tartarus, and everything kind of unfolds from Tartarus. Whereas in 4, it's more based on the stuff that's happening in terms of the different incidents around the town. And 5, it's even more kind of drilled down to that kind of aspect where it's investigating the victims of people that have abused them some way or another, because of their status and power they've been able to wield. And so the subject matter is extremely dark in some places, like again, actual suicides, physical abuse, and also mental abuse and sexual abuse. And that's in the very first area. The very first story you come up to is that kind of a story, and it just sets the game for the rest, the tone for the rest of the game. Which is kind of in line with what they said they were going to be doing. They said that Persona 5 is going to be a pretty dark game, dealing with kind of the more moral questions of slavery and things like that. I mean, hell, the Velvet Room itself is just completely insane in this one. I mean, you're basically treated as a prisoner when you first get there, and you fuse your personas by throwing them into guillotines. So there you go. It's just like insane from right there. But no, yeah, if I was going to give a first impressions for the game for Persona 5, I'd say it's got to be near a 10. It's not quite a 10, but it's got to be near there. There's some problems with it that I've found that are kind of annoying that keep me from making it a 10. The main thing is that, now I'm not entirely sure about this. I have a suspicion about this, but I'm not entirely sure because I haven't actually been able to verify it or not yet. But when I was, of course, I've almost done nothing of the game so far, but that's just because I'm focusing more on the everything else that we're talking about. There's not really much I can do, is there, to be honest? So yeah, let's go next turn. So the issue is that when you lose a battle, you have a chance to, well, depending on various situations, you have a couple choices when you lose a battle. You can either, most of the time you'll only have a choice of switching between either going to the title screen or loading up the last, going to your last safe room. Now, they don't explain what they mean by a safe room. What I think it is the last time you were in a safe room in the game must create a autosave, and it loads up that autosave. Or is it when you select that, it's the last time you actually have saved and you're in a safe room? Or, because if you load the last save, you may not have been in a safe room. You might have been out at, at your room at the LeBlanc or something. But it says safe room specifically. So what I'm thinking is that it's talking about the last time you're in a safe room and the game auto-saved, you go to that point. Now, what I had happen last night was what I'm thinking is what happened and can happen, and it's kind of annoying because they don't really explain what that last your last safe room option is, really. And so I had gotten my arse handed to me by some boss in the stupidest way possible. Typical Persona fashion, the semi-boss, actually it wasn't really a boss, it was a semi-boss, got a critical attack off, and then cast a curse attack, which did a critical on one of my characters. And then did another curse attack, which then took out everyone except for me because I was using Arsene, who has immunity to curse attacks. And so he keeps throwing out curse attacks at me, and I keep on hitting him. I hit him with an Augie skill, which basically is what he's weak against, so it knocks him down, and I do another one on top of that. He gets up, and then he uses this stupidly overpowered, I think, Skullcracker. And I had full health, and he basically killed me in one shot. Did something like, I had 242 health, I think. And he did like 226 or something damage to me. So he took me out in one shot. So I'm already kind of pissed off from that. And so I hit the button for the next to to go to the last save point. Not save point, last safe room. And so I go there and I say, okay, so I go there and I see that we have all this stuff there, and everyone's there, and so I say, okay, I'm just going to leave. You know, I'm going to turn the game off because it's like 4 in the morning or something, and I'm going to go to sleep or something. Or not. I forget exactly what time it was and what I did afterwards, but so, and I thought that it said, what I thought it meant when it said last safe room was at the last place you saved at. So I loaded up the game this afternoon and realized that it actually was not the place where I left out from last night, and it was actually before, like literally 45 minutes of gameplay before that point I was at before last night. And so what I think is that when you say the last safe room, it takes you to the last time you're at a safe room, not your last save. So make sure you don't make that mistake, and if you use that option, always save when you get to that point if you're going to stop and not continue back to where you lost. Otherwise, you're going to get screwed over like I did. So I had to fast forward through a bunch of stuff and got back to where I was at and further. So that's one annoyance there. The other annoying thing is that the sneaking hole mechanic kind of doesn't work all the time. Like, for example, you can have an enemy shadow that you're following behind and you're running up to, that's going when you're running up behind them because there's nowhere to hide or something. But the game will not give you the sneak attack, the ambush reticle to do it, to ambush that shadow. And by the time you get it or get the game to make it do it, you're either getting ambushed yourself, you're getting the enemies attacked you and you're in a situation where you're at a disadvantage, or your advantage turns into just another battle where you're not at any advantage either way. It's a regular battle. And that's happened to me quite a bit, and it's very annoying. And sometimes it has resulted in me getting my arse handed to me. There was one other thing. What was it? Well, if I can't remember, it must not have been that important, so I'm gonna forget about that other thing that I thought that I was remembering. But so it's just, if not 10, it's at least a 9.8 in my opinion.
We have made a breakthrough.
And in my opinion, it's probably going to be if not the game of the year, if not the strongest game of the year contender, because it's just such an epic game. There's so many moments where you're in there and you're just saying, like, what's next, and something even more absurd happens. Like, for example, the whole thing about that one girl committing suicide, that comes completely out of left field. You don't even have any idea it's going to happen. You might have a suspicion that something might happen, but not something like that. And the first time you enter into the room where all the female volleyball team members are, were they completely naked, or just, I think they were completely naked, or laying all over the place in like this bed chamber room with Kamoshida and his version of On there with them. It's just like this, it's, you get this disjointed reality kind of, what the hell am I looking at feeling, and it's just, nothing quite matches the different experiences in Persona 5 that you have in Persona 5 from the other Persona games. I think they've gotten the storytelling down to a point, such a fine point, that they're able to do all kinds of stuff with it now that they may not have been able to do successfully before. So we got lots of stuff unlocked here. We were researching fusion, though, weren't we? Or were we just researching? Oh, no, okay. We're doing gravitational adaptation. I don't even know what we were researching, but that's over here in the biotech tree, which is now a dead-end, dead-end thing. Damn it. Okay, that's fine. Let's go to advanced robotics, ship cost down. I'd rather not do that yet. Let's do... We need more weapons technology. Everything is like freaking just not going anywhere. I mean, nothing from particle beams, nothing from combat lasers, nothing after ultraviolets. It's just like, what the hell is going on? So much stuff being locked back. Let's do orbital dry docks. Maybe that'll unlock something.
This may be the egg we need to crack, Varkona.
Then we'll go next turn. So, like I was saying, I feel that Persona 5 is even darker than Persona 3 in the literal context. Really, they're going after the... Send somebody off to survey my homeworld. Well, fine, you're going to find a bunch of stuff there.
System update.
Oh, really? What do we got? One ship?
We have detected a small incoming fleet.
They're coming up here to Scaramouche. That's fine, they can do that. I only have DEs up here though, so maybe we should try and maybe pay attention to my colony ships, which have arrived at their
Another pearl in your crown,
commanded
Tarka.
locations, and I'm not doing anything with them. Switch that up to terraforming all the way. I can maybe overlook the streaming thing because fine, spoilers thing I'll give them that, but at the same time I think it's BS that Sega's forcing them to do. I don't think it's anything other than that. I think if Atlas hadn't had to be bought out by Sega, that they wouldn't be doing this, basically is what I'm saying. I think it's all Sega. It's all Sega's bullshit. Because they have these stupid ideas about what, you know, how the internet works these days in terms of gaming. It's kind of always laughable to me when companies think, oh, we're going to clamp down on streaming and online walkthroughs and let's plays because it'll improve our sales. When in fact it's the exact opposite, because a lot of people rely on streaming on online walkthroughs and let's plays to judge whether the game is good or not. They don't trust written reviews anymore. They have to actually see the game being played before they make their decision. And by saying we're not going to allow that kind of thing, most people, I mean not most people, some people, enough people would say, well then I'm just not going to buy it because I don't trust online reviewers who are probably paid, or I don't trust user reviews like on Metacritic because everybody that rates reviews is a dumbass these days. It gives a 0 because the game has this one little problem with it, and it's, you know, people are messing around and stuff like that. And so it's always funny to me when a developer, rather it's usually not developers, it's the publishers. When a publisher says, oh, we're not going to allow you to do this because you're going to hurt our sales. And it just makes it's a whole piracy argument thing, which is ridiculous as well for the exact same reasons. People that want to pirate a game are not going to go out and buy a game if you know, stamp out piracy with an iron fist. They're just not going to buy it because the reason they're pirating it is because they want to pay for it because they don't think it's worth what you're charging them to buy it for. Charging them for to buy it, to play it, because they don't think it's worth that much. You don't take that person and say, we're not going to let you download this and play it, and say, no, you're going to go buy the game, right? And they're going to say, yeah, I'm going to go buy the game now because I didn't like it before, but now that you're not going to let me play it for free, I'm going to go buy it for the $60 or whatever that you're charging. It's just some Fantasyland bullcrap. And I just don't understand how companies lie to themselves enough to justify that kind of crap that they put out like that. But whatever, it's the world we live in. Companies want to have their own kind of fantasy place where they live at, where unicorns fart gold or something. Who knows? So it's almost assuredly Sega that's doing it. So I'm not even going to fault Atlas for it because they really can't do anything about it. It's because it's Atlas, because it's Sega. Because Sega kind of took a gamble on buying them out and is rightfully so. They're reaping benefits from their decision to take that risk, but everyone knew that Persona 5 was going to be an instantaneous hit and that was going to sell a lot, because Persona 4 wasn't initially a huge thing, and then just kind of morphed into this giant, you know, I don't even know how to explain it, just kind of like became this nebulous thing that is Persona now. Every time somebody thinks of Persona, they're talking about 4 instead of 3, which is really where I think Persona's franchise was cemented, was in 3, because to me 3 was a better game. Now 5 in my opinion is better than 3 so far. We'll see how it ends. But actually also one thing I want to mention is that one reason I also want to knock, I'll say 9.7. I want to knock off a tenth of a point because Persona 5 story, the story of Persona 5 feels a lot like the story for Persona 4 in terms of the overall, some of the plot devices, if you will. Like, for example, crap, I was just thinking about this and it's gone already. This whole elaborate thing that I figured out how it's the same as Persona 4, not quite the same, but has a lot of similar elements to it. Crap. Maybe I'll think about it as we're going on here. We'll see. But I had this genius, observations about the fact that Persona 5 had the same story structure as 4 and how it was like kind of similar to it. But let's see if I can remember. Maybe I'll remember it later, and we'll talk about it in another video recording session. But like, for example, Morgana, for example, it's quite obvious that Morgana is some sort of shadowish kind of thing like Teddy is. The question is, what was Morgana born from, and what's the eventual conclusion of the arc for that character? For example, in the case of Teddy becomes a person because he gains a ego and by extension is able to generate a persona, and so then has a physical form outside of the TV world. In Persona 5, however, Morgana already has the ability to summon a persona, and he's able to take a form, well, it's able to take a form outside of the multiverse and is an actual, honest-to-God cat in the real world. So the question is now, is this character a shadow turned into a physical entity like Teddy, or is this a Koromaru situation where you have an animal that is able to generate a persona and is able to, fight shadows that way? And at the same time, though, we're talking about an intelligence. Koromaru was smart, but it couldn't talk, so to speak. It didn't have... Koromaru did not have a huge impact on the game's story. He didn't have any kind of meaningful input in most of the discussions, aside from what I guess kind of interpreted through all of his dog talking ways and whatnot. Morgana, on the other hand, has human level intelligence, like Teddy did. So it feels like they're kind of pulling different things from the stories and globbing them in here. While the main overall arching story is unique to itself, the plot devices in the story seem familiar, if not ripped from one of the other two games, to be honest. We'll have to see what happens with it, but I'll see if I can remember what the actual... There was some event that happened that just like made this complete sense to me, that this was like Persona 4's story was gonna pan out the same as Persona 4 did, basically, or the story was gonna unfold the same way or something, but I can't remember what that was now. It's one of those things that you get and then it's gone. So we got a DE versus two DEs, that's fine.
System update.
El Director is not adhering to their thing. Surprising enough. Let's see, we need to get the other fleet, the inbound fleet that's going this way, not the one going the other direction. Actually, we could probably... So it doesn't say enemy fleets, so it just says that they're... Okay, so maybe they're not enemy fleets because they were not at war with them. At the same time, their fleets are inbound to one of our colonies and this place here, which we have a ship at. So I'm willing to bet that they're going to be attacking us with this fleet. We don't have any ships up here capable of doing anything about it. So we built all the ships here. Can I get them over there in a turn? 2 turns, so we'll see what happens.
We will move at full speed.
I think that's a 1 turn for them, but we'll see.
Your word is law, Vakona.
Yeah, so 9.7, I'd say probably would be the minimum I'd give it. If there were some things that were fixed, maybe up to a 9.9. or maximum 9.7. But definitely think that it's a very solid Game of the Year contender. Well, let's see what Cyberpunk 2077 brings out. But for the most part, I think it's probably the top contenders are Breath of the Wild and Persona 5. Breath of the Wild, I mean, I've watched a lot of videos of it and gotten people's takes on it and whatnot. I'm not sure what's so revolutionary about it. I mean, sure, it's an actual open-world Zelda game where you can do whatever you want to. Whoop-de-dee. It's been done ad nauseum. That's been done ad nauseum. You know, almost any open-world game like Far Cry 3? 4. 3 or 4? 3. Well, any Far Cry game, really. Just Cause as well. I mean, you can go anywhere in the map and do whatever, and you can get owned by the characters there. Same thing in The Witcher. The Witcher series. You can go wherever you want to on the map. The only thing is that, you know, the enemies get really tough at certain points, and you can get owned really easily. It's nothing earth-shatteringly new, like people are making out to be. I mean, it is for Zelda. Zelda's been pretty linear game, story-wise, up until now. But for open worlds as a whole, I don't see how it's that revolutionary. Of course, I'll probably get a bunch of angry comments now, but so be it. And this is coming from a huge Zelda fan. I own every Zelda game, well, almost every Zelda game, up until Oracle Seasons and Ages. After that, I didn't keep up with them. But every game up to that point, I have them. I've actually pulled out the original Zelda and Link to the Past occasionally and played them. The original versions, the SNES and the Nintendo versions. Although I do own the Game Boy Advanced Link to the Past as well. And I mean, for a Zelda game, that is, you know, it's a different it's a different pace of gameplay. To say, now you can go, there's no set path, the linear path. You can go wherever the hell you want to, and whatever choices you make, it's just based on how tough the enemies are, whether or not you can actually go very far into these areas. I will say, though, that in terms of the amount of content within that world, that probably rivals from what I see, probably rivals Wind Waker a bit, if not even beats it outright. I think Wind Waker was the last truly. Though, see, here's the problem. I have not actually beaten Twilight Princess yet. I kind of remember where I'm at on that. I didn't get very far into it, though, maybe just 20 or 30 hours. I put way more than that. I actually got to near the end of Wind Waker, though. I didn't actually beat Wind Waker either. So I can't really make that definitive. Twilight Princess might be better than Wind Waker, but for right now, since I haven't played all the way through, Wind Waker is my favorite with Zelda game, and it felt like there was a lot to do in that game, and it feels like there is at least as much, if not more, to do in Breath of the Wild. So, in that regard, I think that there is that, and there's also the whole new mechanic about the weapons breaking. You should watch Angry Joe's. I don't know if it's a review or I don't know if it's an angry review or just kind of a video he made about it, but he had this hilarious thing about the weapons breaking. I should go watch it. It kind of encapsulates what I think that system would be like if I was playing it. It's like kind of frustrating, but at the same time kind of sort of hilarious. But it should be interesting to see where Zelda goes from here. The key thing is not that Breath of the Wild is a great Zelda game. The point of it is, now where does Nintendo take Zelda to? And this is kind of what happened with Mass Effect. After Mass Effect 3, EA basically drove through their inept practices and all their BS horsing around, forced all of BioWare's talented staff to leave, and now Andromeda got stuck being developed by their debugging team. And due to the successes and the just awesomeness of the original Mass Effect trilogy in terms of the story and whatnot, EA basically shot themselves in the head by giving this Andromeda to this very inexperienced team, and then saying, going out and hyping it, saying it was going to be this awesome game. I mean, I think it is pretty good. It's not awesome like they're as awesome as they say it was going to be, but I think it's better than most people are making it out to be. I think the whole animation thing was blown completely out of proportion. But there are some truly messed up things about the game that they have to deal with. So what I'm going to do now is we're going to finish this turn, then I'm going to take a break and come back later and finish this up. Alright, and we're back. So, what was I talking about before we stopped? Persona 5, right. No, we were talking about Breath of the Wild and Zelda and why I was in 2. It's a good game and all, I mean, obviously. But I think the people giving it 10s are just giving it a 10 because it's a new Zelda game, basically. First one in a while. And because it's different from the other Zelda games. I think that's kind of like... It doesn't seem sincere to me, if you will. It's a good game. It's not a 10. It's maybe a 9.5 to a 9.8, I'd say. But it's not 10 level material. There are almost no games that are 10 that rise to the level of a 10. Especially not modern games. I don't know what it is about modern games, but it just seems like in the past games were much, much better narratively. Like, for example, Chrono Trigger. That's probably one of the few games that's easy to give a 10 because it's perfect in so many ways. Okay, perfect might be strong, but it rises to the level of a 10 rating game in so many ways. Story is very captivating. The music is really awesome. There are the gameplay elements are extremely well done, and you just don't see that in modern games so much. I mean, you see them to a lesser extent in specific areas, like maybe you'll have a game that's a really good technical execution, but there's something else that's bad. That's wrong with it. Like maybe the voiceovers aren't good, or the story narrative wasn't properly thought out, or there's some sort of issue with the story. While technically it's a really good game. That's kind of like what Mass Effect Andromeda is. The gameplay elements that are there are, for the most part, pretty solid, but the story and some of the other more ancillary things that don't really matter, like animations, kind of pull you out of the narrative that's there, and also kind of degrade the experience of it. And so it just seems like there's always one or two things that are, at least one or two major things that are that kind of keep modern games from being absolutely awesome. But yeah, I mean, for Game of the Year contenders, I would say first and second, maybe tied for first place in terms of like the rankings and of which games are most likely to be contenders for Game of the Year, are Persona 5 and Breath of the Wild. I think follower-ups would be Horizon, Neo,
update.
maybe Nier Automata, To be honest,